This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey, everybody. I hope you're having a great week. I know we had a lot of excitement on Monday night, so we moved the show to Tuesday night after we all watched Georgia battle North Carolina State in a Game 3 of the NCAA Super Regional. The final ticket getting punched for Omaha, and it's the Wolfpack punching that ticket after punching out the Dogs 8-5. I got to tell you, that's one of the best baseball games I've seen in a long time, and NC State was on their game. Georgia, a valiant effort. But pitching typically beats hitting. Good pitching beats good hitting, and that's kind of what happened. Some clutch arms came out of the bullpen. North Carolina State had a deeper pitching staff coming in, and their coach, Elliott Avent, squirreled these guys away. Georgia hadn't seen them until that final game, middle of the game. They bring in that freshman, and the freshman does a really nice job with the bases loaded against Charlie Condon and Slade Alford, retiring the Dogs with the bases loaded. And then, of course, just a little bit later, Slade Alford sends that ball to the fence. Would have been a 3-run home run robbed by a leaping catch. You talk about a game of inches. And Wes Johnson said that, you know, if Alford's ball is just a little bit further and outside the reach, might be having an entirely different conversation. But that's how baseball works. And I don't think it takes away what Georgia accomplished. I mean, obviously, everybody wanted more. The fans showed up. There was 3,944 people there at Foley. That is over capacity. Tickets were in high demand throughout the week. You saw those ticket prices, and why not? This was a team that was picked to finish 6th in the SEC East, and they end up a number 7 national seed. And to me, that's remarkable. It's a remarkable achievement. 43-17 record, best record that Georgia's had since 2019. It came against the number 9 schedule in the nation. You got to be impressed with that. And you know, Wes Johnson, a first-time head coach. Josh Brooks went out there and found Wes, or Wes found Josh, and turned out to be an incredible hire. You know, the mindset and just the confidence that this team had, you could tell. You know, these guys believed in themselves, and that meant everything. And it carried through. Whenever Georgia hit some adversity, they were able to rise up above it throughout the year. And, you know, continue their winning ways, just continue to climb in the rankings and climb as a national seed and get to host the Super Regional. So 8 teams are left in the World Series field. You got 4 teams from the SEC and 4 teams from the ACC, and it all starts Friday at 2 o'clock. And that is when North Carolina will play against Virginia. That night game, the number 1 overall seed, Tennessee versus Florida State. Of course, Georgia beat Tennessee earlier this year, one of the teams in the World Series they beat. Then you go to 2 p.m. Saturday. This is the slot Georgia would have been in. Now, NC State will fill that slot and play Kentucky, the number 2 national seed. And then the night game on Saturday night, Texas A&M and Florida. Florida Gators, unseeded, go to Clemson and manage to slide through Clemson and into the World Series. They'll play A&M. 2 more teams that Georgia beat this year, Texas A&M and Florida. So it was a remarkable year. And, of course, Charlie Condon was right in the middle of it. Prolific final at bat for Charlie. He hits the solo home run, closes the gap to 8-5. Dogs weren't able to get any further. NC State, with an outstanding reliever, and Derek Smith was able to shut them down. But to see Charlie homer in his final at bat at Foley Field was appropriate. And the guy had 37 home runs this year, led the nation in home runs, led the nation in hitting, led the nation in slugging percentage, played 5 different positions for Georgia. Tremendous versatility that helped Georgia out and helped get the team to the World Series. And beyond that, just a tremendous ambassador. The total package, I guess Wes Johnson called him Superman. And at times it seemed like, you know, Charlie could carry this team. He'll probably be the number 1 or number 2 overall draft pick. I know he hasn't completely committed to leaving, but he's got about 9 million reasons to leave, if not 10 million, waiting for him, as some major league team is going to pick Charlie Condon and try to make him a star at the next level. And there's no reason to believe that he won't be. When you look at him going from walk-on status when he came in from the Walker School there in Marietta to becoming the SEC Player of the Year this year and one of the finalists for the Golden Spikes Award, which goes to the best player in the nation. So just a remarkable season for Charlie Condon. You know, Corey Collins was a guy that was 1 for 10 hitting when Wes moved him into the lead-up spot earlier this year. Corey immediately belted 2 home runs, held that spot, was the toughest out in baseball. Corey Collins led the nation on base percentage. I thought he brought a real swagger to the team. You could see what a leader he was, and another guy that just had a really special season. And I guess the other guy you got to mention is Trey Phelps. Only a freshman. He'll be back. And Trey with 3 hits, including that 2-run home run early on last night, put the Dogs out in front, really got the crowd into it. Going down the batting lineup, Corey batting leadoff, he'll be gone. Charlie Condon, he'll be gone. Slade Alford, the transfer from Mississippi State, has eligibility remaining, and this is a guy that, came up clutch, earlier in the series. I thought that Slate was a very important player. Dylan Goldstein looks like he's gone. Trey Phelps returning, and Colby Branch, the number 9 hitter, hit 17 home runs, including a school record 4 grand slams. This is another guy that's going to return. You lose catcher Fernando Gonzalez, but it looks like, with Henry Hunter, this is a guy that can return. The pitching staff, Zach Harris, Colton Smith, Leighton Finley, those guys all with eligibility remaining. So Wes Johnson will have a really nice nucleus to build around. Now, he'll also have a little NIL pop behind him and a lot more street cred when he goes out on the recruiting trail. So last year, of course, Wes brought in 18 transfers and 10 freshmen. This is the nature of college baseball. There's going to be guys going in the portal. There's going to be guys coming out of the portal to Georgia. So I think with Wes's ability to identify players, I think that bodes really well. You look at what he did in just 1 year, and you wonder what can he do with another year and the improvement of the facilities. There's been phase 1 done, the players' locker room and some of the other things they've worked on, but now phase 2 is coming. It's going to enhance Foley Field that much more. So I think these are exciting times for Georgia baseball. Got in the elevator last night to go up, and Kirby's sitting in the elevator, standing in the elevator, kind of pressed against the wall. I guess he didn't want the elevator open up and people to see him on the ground floor. But Kirby was there at the game last night, and the way Kirby Sports programs is really tremendous. And I know it makes a lot of Georgia fans happy to see Kirby Smart at these other events, and it makes Kirby happy too. The story of Kirby closing out the recruitment of Slade Alford and Colby Branch, 2 of the guys that were, I think, 3rd and 4th on the team in home runs, most home runs of the incoming players, guys that are going to come back. As the story goes, Wes Johnson was still at LSU after being hired at the World Series and couldn't see these guys when they came to campus. So Kirby took it in his own hands and made sure that the Dogs locked those guys down. My guess is Wes might ask Kirby to visit with maybe a couple of other recruits that might want to see him now that Kirby has his elite status as the best college football coach in the nation. Also the richest contract, $13 million a year. And I would say Wes Johnson is in line for a really big raise as well. Now, next up on the program, want to talk to Dean Weaver. Dean's a local friend, real estate agent, sold me my house. Actually sold Wes Johnson his house too. And but played on that 2008 College World Series team. And Dean had some really interesting insight when I was talking to him yesterday. And I'm like, hey, man, how about you just come on the show and give us some perspective from 2008 and what this year meant to former Bulldogs like yourself, that were there when the program climbed the ladder and reached the final as the 2008 World Series runners-up. So we're going to talk to Dean Weaver, and then we're going to finish up with our hot and cold segment right after that. Right now, want to look and listen to this message from our sponsor, Ingles. Ingles always there for us each and every Monday night, this case Tuesday night. Really appreciate what Ingles does for us. Let's hear what our sponsor at Ingles has to say this evening.
Do you know Ingles only sells USDA choice and prime cuts of meat? Maybe it's time to reward yourself. Our butchers cut all our meat fresh in the store every day. Grass-fed, organic, you name it. Not only that, we'll even cut it to order just the way you like it. And we grind meat fresh in the store multiple times a day. It's all in the bag. That's the best meat in town for the best folks in town. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Welcome back to the program. As promised, Dean Weaver, a member of the 2008 Georgia World Series team. Of course, those Dogs finished runners-up in the 08 World Series. Dean, thanks for joining the program. I wanted to get you on here to add some perspective to what we saw as a former Dog, as a guy that's been there when the program was right there near the top. The last time the team went this far, you were a part of that team, and the environment last night. I want to start there, because the North Carolina State coach, Elliott Avent, he couldn't have been more complimentary in terms of the fans, Really love the environment. You were there. You played at Foley Field. What did you think about last night compared to back in the day?
It was awesome. It's been a long time coming, 16 years, I believe. So it was really cool. It was so much different too. Obviously, when we did it in 2008, we had the day game. So just having the night game, having the lights, having everybody with the cell phones, the greenhouse, it just really took us back. And I think we really showed up for it. Unfortunately, it wasn't, the outcome that we were looking for. But just give all the credit to Coach Johnson and his staff. Just the fact that he was able to do what he could in such a short amount of time. It's really a testament to, where the program's going. And we have the utmost respect and confidence in what he's going to do.
Yeah, you met him and you had a good rub early on. I remember talking to you after you met Wes. What were some things you picked up on, some thoughts you had about him right out of the gate and why you thought he was going to have such a good year?
So I think I told you the story. We helped him out, relocating to Athens. And the first time that I met him, we met at a house. His wife jumped out of the car, and it was the second or third day of recruiting when that opened up. And, she was just so super nice. And he walked out. He was on his phone. "How you doing, man? Sorry, I got to take this call." But just to spare you, for 45 minutes, that entire time, he was on the phone talking to recruits. So, he walked in the house, and she was like, "What do you think?" He's like, "Looks great. Let's do it." So from that time, and then he's like, "Sorry, I got to get on this other phone call." So you knew he was serious about this. And the dude just got off the plane from, Omaha winning the national championship. And the thing that stood out to me was that at no time did he ever really bring that up. I would ask him about it, but he was on to the next thing. And I think a lot of coaches are going to dwell on it and say, "Hey, look what I did, blah, blah, blah." I did not get that impression at all. And you could tell he was locked in from day one. And he even said it in his first press conference. I think he said, "What keeps me up at night is the recruits that I'm going to miss out on," And so he was just on to the next. And I said, "Man, this dude, he's going to be legit. He's all baseball." And that was the first thing he told me. He said, "Man, I don't know if I care about really much anything else, my family. And the school, obviously, but he's like, I'm a baseball dude through and through. That's all I know." And I said, "Dude, that is exactly what we need right now." And a pitching guy too. That was huge.
Dean, a local, well-known realtor here in the Athens area, I think he told me all Wes needed was a recliner in that house. Everything else worked out just fine for him.
Absolutely.
And he's earned a little bit of a rest. But to your point, Coach Johnson tells us that all the time. He's always constantly working because he doesn't want to take his foot off the gas and get caught. And Dean, now George is in a position, team that was picked to finish sixth in the East. They end up a number 7 national seed, where teams are going to have to catch up. When you look to the future of the program, and we want to talk about Charlie Condon and Corey Collins in a minute, but when you look at the future of the program and the way that it works now with the portal, obviously it wasn't that way with you back in your era. But what are your thoughts about George's ability, to stay up with some of these elite teams? Because the SEC's got 4 teams in the College World Series. Seems like every year.
I know, it's insane, and I was hoping we were going to have 5 in it. Just to kind of take up and say, "Well, we got you, ACC." But no, I think, starting with Coach Johnson, he's got the right pieces in place. And kind of going back to what I said with recruiting, the fact that he was able to bring in a couple of guys out of the portal just like that, from day one, that were huge contributors. And he does a really good job at that. I think once we get kind of up to where we want to with facilities, that's always been a conversation the past couple of years. What they're planning to do in left field, that's going to be great. That's going to be a game changer. But yeah, it's just, the SEC, it doesn't matter. Every year it's going to be tough. It's always catching up with the Joneses, who's getting the bigger stadiums and all this kind of stuff. But I think with his mindset and what he's able to do in recruiting the Southeastern Conference, he comes from Arkansas and Mississippi State. He has a good foundation. And I think he's going to go after, the right guys. And Athens, it speaks for itself. When I came here in 2008, we didn't have the premier facilities. I loved what we had. Arkansas, they were kind of on a different level, but I came because of Athens. All my buddies from East Cobb, we came here. We wanted to play together. I love Athens. I love the scene, at Foley Field with Kudzu Hill at the time, and that was what got me. So this year was huge. In year one, you can take a team like that, go to Supers, knocking on the door to get to Omaha. I just can't reiterate how excited we are, moving forward.
Now, as a former pitcher reliever, at one point on the stopper of the year list, Dean started out pretty hot in 2008, 7 saves, a 0.79 ERA, 1 earned run in 10 outings, 5 saves. Well, you were on fire. Wes is known as a metrics guy, and he's a pitching coach. and they talk about this pitching lab. One of the things that they're going to add to enhance those facilities to recruits. As a pitcher, how important is the science of it? I mean, obviously you're big 6'4" strong guy that could, throw a lot of heat, but how important is the science? And when these pitchers are looking at schools, what difference do you think that could make for Wes?
I think it's huge. And that was something that was completely different when I came up. We never really had anything like that. It was pretty much, looking guys that have some of those, the measurables. You want obviously guys that are 6'3" and can throw 90 plus. I mean, obviously the game has changed now. Like everybody's throwing 95. I don't know if I'd be able to, make a roster spot on this team. I don't think I could hold a towel, to be honest with you. But it is huge just because things have changed so much and it's gotten so analytical and you're looking at the biomechanics of pitching. I would have loved it just because that's how I was. I was always, trying to tweak my mechanics and all that kind of stuff to get to the next level. So it's just huge. And you see what he did with, Skeens last year at LSU. And he talked about when he came from Air Force, I think he was, maybe like a low 90s kind of guy. And then he grew into his body. But obviously, just when he went to LSU, he took off. And, I mean, the rest is history. So he was able to learn how to use his body. And you can see with a lot of these guys, I mean, how they improve with velocity and everything else, the pitching staff, they greatly improved this year. So, yeah, moving forward, I mean, that is a huge, huge factor for, I would say, most of these kids besides just, hey, I'm going to go to this school, because I like it. That is a huge X factor for everybody.
Charlie Condon did some amazing things, but before we talk about Charlie, you played with Gordon Beckham, and he's a guy that's obviously very well known. For those that didn't play with Gordon Beckham or know him as well as you did, tell me what kind of teammate he was and what he meant to Georgia baseball. I want to acknowledge that first.
Yeah, and we'll have that debate between who's the greatest Bulldog of all time. Is it Charlie? Is it Gordon? But like I told you, I said, Gordon, he really came into his own. We all know he was going to be great. I mean, he came in. I mean, he was a top recruit. He was. I mean, just he had everything. But he took off his junior year. I can't remember how many home runs he hit. It might have been 28, 29. But he was a great teammate. Everybody loved him. And the thing about that team was like we did everything together, whether it was at the dining hall, obviously working out in the mornings, the study hall, outside of school, going out, whatever it was. Like we just had that chemistry, and that was kind of what I saw with this team. Even when I went earlier in the season, I think a lot of people had their doubts. They were like, what is this team going to become after the past couple of years when things were a struggle? And I think some of them were kind of beaten down. But when you go out, like they had that swag, kind of like you look at Tennessee, look at Kentucky, a lot of those teams, they just have that it factor and they play for each other. And you just see it, in the dugout. I mean, they're always with each other. They're having fun. They're enjoying it. And that was the best part. But Gordon, he was even kill. I mean, he was there for you when you needed him. Everybody knew how great he was. But I will say this, he had an attention span of about that big. So if you're going to have a conversation with him, sorry, Gordon, I just got to say it. Like, you better get it in quick because you blink your eye and he's gone. But that's just how he was. He was wired. He was always bam, 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 on to the next. But, we loved him. I'll say this. There's a picture at my house when we lost in 2008. I don't know if I'll ever look at it again, but it was, me hanging over the railing, crying and everything. And it was probably the worst day of my life. I guess I've had a good life to say that's the worst. But there was him coming over to me and he, put his hands on my shoulders. And that was just really cool for me. Just he was the first one there because he knew I was tore up about it. But he was just, man, it's baseball. We got here and we were so appreciative of it. But I'll always remember that moment. But now he's great. Charlie, my kid loves him. I think every kid now in Athens loves Charlie. He's done tremendous things. Everybody knows his story. Hopefully they'll put a documentary out there about him. But that's what everybody talks about with Charlie. He's an outstanding talent. He's probably going to be in the big leagues in the next 2 years, if I were to guess. He's got it all. But I think it's just the fact that he's level-headed, he's even keel, and you can tell the teammates just rally around him. Whether he goes 0 for 4 or 4 for 4, 4 strike, 4 home runs, he's going to be the same player. You don't see him throwing his helmet, nothing like that. And that's what keeps that positive energy through your clubhouse. And that took off, and you showed it the whole season.
Yeah, no doubt it's going to help Georgia out quite a bit to have an iconic figure. A lot of little kids growing up looking at Charlie Condon, wanting to be Georgia Bulldogs. Recruits out there seeing Charlie's story and seeing what Coach Wes Johnson has done. How does a baseball program recruit a prospect, Dean? I mean, you're a guy that came out of Douglasville over there. We see a lot of great talent in Georgia. Sometimes they leave the state. Sometimes they stick around. I guess NIL is a factor right now. But what's going to be important to these prospects right now as they look at Georgia baseball, and what does this season mean for West down the road?
I mean, you really can't overstate how huge it was just coming from, excuse me, where we were. And again, things are so much different. I mean, I still feel like I'm 16 getting recruited right now, but I also feel like I'm 60 years old, I can barely go to the gym. But no, for me, I had the blessing of playing at East Cobb's. Everybody knows that brand name. When you played a perfect game over there, like everybody was there. So we had a lot of eyes on us. And now it's kind of a similar situation, I guess, at Lake Point. But no, I think what you were kind of talking about, like with the pitching lab and just all that kind of stuff, when you bring kids in for the summer camps and their recruiting visits, showing them all of those things, I mean, it matters. I know I would have loved to do that. I wish I had gone around and done more recruiting visits, but like once I finally got that first call from Georgia, like that was it. I wasn't going to waste my time going to any more schools. I went to Tech. Sorry to say that. It was kind of where I was pushed to do it, but once I got it was all Georgia. But yeah, so again, kind of going back to recruiting, like these guys, Coach Simpson, Coach Johnson, they are all on it. They probably have to charge their phones 15 times a day because their phone just doesn't stop with text messages and everything. So they do a great job. Athens kind of sells itself, but I think with everything they have in place, the right pieces, and just that atmosphere like you saw last night, I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that?
There was obviously some disappointment for Charlie and the Bulldogs after the game. It was a tough loss. I thought NC State was about as good a performance from any team I've seen all year. The field, pitching, power. What these Georgia players are going through right now, Dean, and you went through it at a College World Series. I mean, what would be your message to these guys as far as trying to get back from that? You see the fans, already a little spoiled and disappointed. Your thoughts about what you took in and what message you'd want to send to the team and some of the fans as well.
Yeah, so kind of another parallel with that team. Obviously, we had the blessing to go to Omaha and do that. But like with our 08 team, a lot of people forget the year before my freshman year, we were 23-33, I believe. So it was a rough year. And when we came in, we had lost some big pieces. We lost, Matt Robbins, Jonathan Wyatt, Adam McDaniel, a lot of those focal pieces that have been around on the 04-06 teams. So I remember I had a bad freshman year. A lot of us did. Our freshman class, we didn't really exceed our expectations. So coming in the next year, we were like, dude, we're losing a lot of people. Like, we got to step up. So I think going into that year, we were just kind of like, an X factor. We didn't know what we were going to be or how far we were going to go. But we had the right pieces in place as far as the captains. I mean, you had Ryan Pizell. He was our fearless leader. Like, he just brought it. Everybody rallied around him. You obviously had Gordon. You had Fields coming back after a bad year. You knew he wasn't going to have another year like that. So yeah, anyways, when we were going into that, I'll tell a quick little story. We played Arkansas Friday night. It was a night game. I can't remember the score, but it was just one of those kind of heartbreaker games. So we got on the bus. I was sitting in like the third row from the back, and Pizell, he was in the very back. We were probably halfway, getting at the hotel, 10 minutes in the ride, and you just hear Ryan Pizell stand up. He put his hands on the seats, never looked up. He put his head down, and he just started screaming and yelling, use words I cannot use on here. You'll never have me. But he did it for probably a good 3 or 4 minutes straight. Nobody said a word the entire ride home. We just sat there, and it just kind of basted upon us. So we showed up the next day. Joey Lewis, my teammate, he had stomach bug, I believe. He was one of our starting catchers. So he couldn't play. Massineri stepped in from DH to play catcher. That game, I think he hit 2 home runs, hit one off the batter's eye, and we won Saturday, Sunday. And the rest of that SEC, that was just that moment that took us there. But anyways, just kind of going back to your question, we didn't know what we were going to be. And I think a lot of that was with this team right here. We had some pieces in place, but in my opinion, I think they would even say they probably exceeded their expectations and what they were thinking for this year. A lot of people said, hey, if we go 15-15 in the SEC, I think that's a win. So to get to that point, I know it is disheartening, man. But the older you get, to look back and say, man, we made it that far. We were, what'd you say, predicted to make 7th in the SEC or something?
6th in the East, and you ended up a number 7 national seed.
So, I mean, that's what I would look at. So, yeah, I mean, we would love to go to Omaha, but we got a lot of guys coming back. Trey Phelps, that dude's going to be a stud. You got some guys coming back. We got some arms. Coach Johnson's going to bring some dudes in. So I think the future is bright. You wished it for the seniors. A lot of those guys, they could have made it to Omaha. There's nothing like it. But I would sit back and say, man, the way that you finished the season last night at Foley, super regionals compared to where you were the past couple of years, I mean, dude, that's a win in and of itself, and you have nothing to hang your heads about. We're super proud of everybody there. We're excited, and you guys have brought the program back to, where we want to be.
That's right. I wasn't even looking to buy a house, and Dean was bugging my ear for Georgia baseball all year long. Talk about a proud former Bulldog, Dean Weaver. Dean, thank you so much for sharing your memories and your perspective. I really appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you soon.
You bet. Thanks, Mike. Go Dogs.
You got it. Now it's time for a hot and cold segment brought to you by Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing.
Want to make sure your family stays comfortable all year long? Our family of trained comfort specialists are available anytime to service or repair your system. Or it may be time to replace your old units with a new Trane HVAC system.
We are a locally owned family business, and we carefully select the technicians who we send into your home.
At Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, we are large enough to handle all of your HVAC and plumbing needs,
but small enough to care.
Call today to take advantage of our 3-visit annual maintenance plan.
Well, welcome back. It's time for the hot and cold segment, and it starts out with Georgia football recruiting. The Dogs now number 6 in the nation on that 2025 class. Rankings really don't mean a whole lot because we know this class isn't anywhere near complete. Only 12 commits at this point. Led by 5-star linebacker Zayden Walker from Schley County. This is a top 10 player in the nation and one of those elite in-state prospects, as is 5-star tight end Ellis Williams from Camden County. Down there in Kingsland, Georgia, the number 21 player in the nation. Don't know if you saw this, Jeff Sentell earlier this week. Of course, Jeff does a show on Wednesday night before the hedges, talking about quarterback commit Ryan Montgomery picking up an honor as the top athlete in his community. So Ryan Montgomery is currently the number 13 quarterback in the nation and number 156 overall in 2025 per 247. But he recently was honored for being the top athlete in his county. They put him out of town, named the Male Athlete of the Year for his first year on a gridiron as a first-team All-Ohio pick and quarterback Mr. Football finalist. So how about that? Importance at Findlay High School basketball team. It was 21-3 and 13-1 in conference play. You like those quarterbacks that are athletes. Carson Beck, of course, pretty outstanding basketball player in his day. And now Georgia looking forward to Carson Beck leading them to another national title as the co-Heisman Trophy favorite entering the season. You just can't say enough about what Carson Beck looks like. And now another talented young quarterback coming in who is a multi-sport athlete. Also on the hot list, Georgia baseball fans. North Carolina State coach Elliott Avent. He's been in the business 28 years. And I'm just going to read you what he said because this is how he started his press conference. Now remember, North Carolina State had just played about as perfect of a game as you could, beating Georgia 8-5 in that decisive Game 3 of the Super Regional. And Avent comes in and he's got his players next to him. And he starts out by saying, first of all, everybody here at the University of Georgia, to the city of Athens, they run a heck of a Super Regional, everything first class. He says, I've been to a lot of places where fans cheer for their teams, but they're as rude as they can be, saying things you probably wouldn't say around your mama. He said, I thought the fans at the University of Georgia this week, I will always have great respect for them and pull for them in other sports as long as they're not playing against NC State. He said, I came away with so much respect for how classy their fans were, just the way they handled everything. Obviously, he has a good friend at Georgia and Stacey Searles, but the fans resonated with him to the point that even after the press conference, he was sticking around and talking and remarking that this might be the best fan base that he's ever experienced. So big tip of the cap to the Georgia baseball fans that turned out. The attendance was 3,944, not very much. That's why they call Foley Field the Wrigley Field of the SEC. It's an on-campus stadium. There's not a whole lot more room to put people, but people love that intimate setting so much that Josh Brooks has decided they're going to continue to enhance that. You heard Dean Weaver talk about some of the projects going on and some of the space they're going to create with a baseball building down the left field line. And I believe there's going to be an area where people can, gather outside the left field bleachers as well. So some big plans on deck for Foley. You're going to see that next season. You're going to see Wes Johnson come back. A lot of returning talent for the Bulldogs. And, the way they finished the season, they did not get the trip to Omaha, but you really got to tip your cap to Wes Johnson and the Bulldogs and what they were able to accomplish. Played so well, sweeping through their regional, knocking off Georgia Tech, and exciting. I think Jeff Dancer said it might have been the best game in the Georgia Georgia Tech series history in baseball, which covers a lot of ground. That come from behind 10-inning victory, 8-6, was just huge. And giving NC State all they wanted, battling back after losing that first game 18-1, they win 11-2, jumped out to a 2-0 lead. But I got to tell you, NC State pitching was deep. Their defense was perfect. They have not had an error in the postseason. You remember the player, the Serrano kid, making that leaping catch, and Robin Slade offered what would have been a 3-run home run that would have tied the game. So NC State was just dialed in, a little bit better in some key areas, but Georgia, no shame. You heard what Dean Weaver said, and I think he represents a lot of people and a lot of fans in terms of how proud they are of what the Georgia Bulldogs accomplished this season. That'll do it for this week's show. I want to remind you once again, Brandon Adams every day, 10 a.m. on DawgNation Daily. Don't forget, Jeff Sentell on Wednesday nights. Connor and Kaylee join you on Thursday nights, and I'm going on with Brandon on Wednesdays on his show. I make my appearance on Brandon's show at 10:20 a.m. on Wednesdays. Get that out of my mouth there. Appreciate you joining me tonight. If you got any questions or comments about the Diamond Dawgs or tonight's show, please feel free to leave them in the comment section or follow me on Twitter at MikeGriffith32. Have a great week, everybody.